So we're going to talk about a few things that I see as a model for innovation. First one is we've got to stimulate ideas. How do we do that? Second, what's the process? How does our brain work, and how do we actually take ideas and create new ideas? How do we use that mechanism that we produce ideas from? We need to take action. And we have some resources, financial resources, people resources, etc. What are the resources we use? And last of all, how do we keep innovating? Because one of the challenges when we're under pressure and under stress and we're limited with staff and we've got too many projects to handle is we don't set aside a little time for innovating. So the first part, stimulating ideas. One of the challenges that we have is we have some biases when it comes to developing new ideas. We call them cognitive biases, thinking biases. Things that get in our way when we try and develop ideas. And some of these are conditional. They're things we've learned over the years that we've grown up, the environments we've been in, the people we hang out with, perhaps even in our company, the people that we work with. One of those is what we call confirmation bias. And that is everybody else, I wonder if I think like everybody else and everybody else thinks like me. So we're trying to confirm our beliefs to see if we have similar thinking. Second one is what we call the bandwagon effect. And the bandwagon effect is, gee, if everybody else is doing that, maybe we should jump on board and do that too. Third one is what we call a negativity bias. As adults, we've learned to shut down the time between a thought and actually implementing it by looking at it from a negative perspective. We find everything wrong with the project first, then we go, oh, okay, there's one part we can work on. This is good. Let's move ahead. We should switch that around. We should become positive about something, look at all the merits and the benefits of making the change, and then use the negative part to judge it and analyze it. Functional fixedness. We develop a new idea, and before we even launch that idea or test it out, we're looking at how does it function? Is it going to fit in? Does it really work? And we invest a whole bunch of time in that aspect of things. And then the last one is what we call projection. And that is, I think like this, therefore everybody else should think like that. I'll give you a funny little story about that. I had a client of mine, major company, the president of the company, and we went in to pitch a media campaign for his company. And in the discussion, we were talking about what we were going to do for the different media. And I brought up a particular radio station. He says, I don't like that radio station. And I went, so? Your customers do. And he looked at me and says, oh, yeah, okay, you're right. And how many times do we do that? We don't like something, so therefore, why would anybody else like it? So our brain. Typical model they talk about in brain science is we have two halves. Current studies now talk about 4 quadrants. But the two halves basically connect together. There's wiring between the two that fire at thousands and thousands of milliseconds to connect the two halves. We have the left half, which is the linear, logical, rational side, the process side. And if we're time stressed or we're overburdened in organizing and structuring things, what we need to do is figure out a way to reduce that stress and get back on track to think. One of the ways to do that is to switch to right brain operating modes. So that's do things like sing. Now I wouldn't suggest you wander around the office and do this necessarily, unless you're a really good singer. Play sports, draw. How many have been in a meeting and seen somebody doodle as they're carrying a conversation? That's the right brain. They're actually engaging the right brain in the process of thinking. Then we have the right brain, and that is the creative, emotional, holistic side of the brain. That's the big picture thinking side of the brain, the conceptual side of the brain. And oftentimes, if we're overwhelmed with trying to solve problems and come up with new ideas, we can start to feel a little emotionally depressed, maybe overwhelmed, and so we need to switch to the left side of the brain. That way we can relieve the right side of the brain and use the left side of the brain to engage and change our thinking. So all these years later, after many years of trying to understand how innovation and creativity works, I've discovered something. And that is that on my left side of the brain, there's nothing right. And on my right side of the brain, there's nothing left. That's been the problem all along. Anybody else feel like that?